We're here to plunge into some really impactful ideas and bring you the core insights without all the noise. Think about it when you bridge knowledge gaps, whether it's through education that changes a career or maybe some groundbreaking tech innovation. The potential is just immense. Today we're taking a deep dive into the work of Josiah Umezerik. Really fascinating stuff. We'll be looking at two key initiatives, Each One Teach One Tech's cybersecurity training and also the Alpha AI language model project.
Right. And our mission really is to boil down the most important takeaways from the sources we've looked at. We want to give you a shortcut, basically, to understanding these crucial areas, not just what they are, but the deeper why behind them, why they matter right now.
Okay, so let's start locally, right here in South Carolina with Each One Teach One Tech. It's a 501c nonprofit public charity. What's the fundamental issue they're trying to tackle?
Well, at its heart, Each One Teach One Tech is really about empowering underserved communities. It's giving them the tools, the resources they need for sustainable jobs, good jobs in fields like cybersecurity, AI, these emerging tech areas. It's all about creating pathways to stable careers, especially where maybe those traditional paths aren't easily available.
Okay, and their training approach sounds, different. They specialize in security operations center, SOC level 1 analyst roles.
Yeah, that's the focus. But they build this really hybrid skill set around it. So areas like AWS Cloud, GRC, that's governance, risk, and compliance, threat intelligence, app security. It's quite comprehensive.
And how did this program come about? It wasn't always like this, was it?
No, that's what's interesting. It actually started as a 2.5-year U.S. Department of Labor apprenticeship, a much longer commitment. But Josiah and the team, they saw a need for something quicker, more immediate. So they refined it into this very accessible 6-month program. And it wasn't just about cutting time. It was a deliberate move designed specifically for people who are already working, people who need to pay bills. It makes getting these skills possible without having to quit your job.
That's smart, really practical. It highlights how, standard education often doesn't work for people juggling life. It sounds like the real emphasis is getting people truly job ready, not just book smart. What about this job relatable hands-on training? How is that different from just, say, running simulations? Can you give us an example?
Absolutely. This is where it gets really effective. Instead of just simulations, they use real-time live data. It comes from actual small businesses that they treat as managed security services clients. Their whole training setup is literally called a security operations center.
Okay, so they're seeing real incidents, real traffic.
Exactly. Josiah's point is that you can't just learn theory. You need that muscle memory, that experience of solving problems under pressure with actual data flowing in. Simulations don't quite capture that. Learners are dealing with live scenarios, not just made-up ones. It's real under-the-hood learning. Like Josiah says, you can only defend what you know how it works. This hands-on piece means they're building critical thinking and response skills right from the start.
That makes a ton of sense. And the support structure sounds solid too. Mentors, study groups, even makeup classes and videos.
Yeah, the support is definitely there. And beyond just the tech skills, they really focus on workforce development. So help with resumes, building a personal brand, and this is key, how to use social media effectively to get noticed by recruiters. It's really a whole package aimed at getting people not just trained, but actually employed and set for a career.
And this onboarding idea, treating learners like team members.
Mm-hmm.
How does that change things? Positioning instructors as experienced team members.
It creates this immediate sense of shared purpose. It's not us versus them, teacher versus student. Treating them as team members fosters collaboration right away. The instructors being team members with more experience breaks down that typical hierarchy. It leads to what they call a collective truth seekers mentality. Everyone's learning together, sharing what they find, tackling problems collectively. It feels less like being taught and more like, figuring things out together, which is much closer to a real SOC environment.
That's a really interesting approach to teaching. So that's the actual impact. We heard from some graduates, right? Their experiences sound pretty compelling.
Oh, absolutely. Their stories really show the program's value.
Let's talk about Tamika Brown. She's a cybersecurity support technician now. She mentioned big gains in SOCs and SIMs, security information event management systems, specific platforms even. And she talked about working with frameworks like NIST, CIS, PCI DSS, and how the program connected those big frameworks to, actual day-to-day operational needs.
Yeah, and what really stood out with Tamika was her focus on communication. Being able to explain complex tech stuff to, as she put it, all people. Bridging that gap She also highlighted how important community support and sponsorships are for programs like this to keep going and grow. It's not just technical chops, it's those soft skills too, making knowledge useful.
Right. Then there was Deontay Reese. He really zoomed out to the bigger picture. He talked about cyber being this huge growth area, the talent shortage, and how the program gives marketable skills for jobs that could be, well, life-changing.
Deontay put it really well, connecting it directly to economic empowerment. He sees it as a way to break cycles of poverty, offering real paths to financial stability in communities that need it. And he hit on accessibility too. It's affordable. You don't need tons of prior experience. It opens doors to cybersecurity for people who maybe can't do the traditional 4-year college route.
He also made a great point about diversity in tech, how different voices boost creativity, innovation, and help close those opportunity gaps. And clearly, it builds confidence, boosts digital literacy for everyone, no matter where they started.
Definitely. And Yellowed Raw, the community engagement and learner success coach, she talked about seeing that confidence grow firsthand. She really emphasized the networking aspect, how learners build the strong community and genuinely help each other out. It speaks volumes about the supportive environment they've built there.
So it's clear Each One Teach One Tech is doing vital work here in South Carolina, tackling skill gaps, changing lives.
Yeah.
But Josiah's vision, this theme of empowerment and access, it goes global, doesn't it? With the Alpha AI project.
Exactly. And what's interesting is Alpha AI started as an R&D project under Each One Teach One Tech. The focus is on social good, creating impactful AI, and they actually plan to spin up an AI workforce program from it eventually.
Okay, so Alpha AI, what's the core problem it's trying to fix? Because, we have ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. These LMs seem incredibly powerful already.
They are powerful, no doubt, but they often carry biases, They tend to reflect the perspectives, the ideologies, the cultural context of whoever built them, whether that's American, French, Chinese. And they operate on this often unspoken assumption that everyone speaks English, which just isn't true. The reality is something like 90-95% of the world doesn't speak English as their first native language. They might learn it, sure, for work or necessity, but it's not their natural linguistic operating system, if you will.
That's a really powerful point.
Yeah.
And technically, these existing models struggle with other languages.
Yeah.
What goes wrong?
Well, you get issues like back translation. So if you input something in, say, Yoruba, its meaning often has to get routed through English first before it can be understood or translated to another language. English becomes this mandatory filter. This can lead to hallucination, the AI making stuff up or giving inaccurate info, and just a massive loss of cultural nuance. Essentially, the languages of billions of people get kind of commoditized, flattened, distorted by this dependency on English. It's more than just translation. It's about truly representing thought and culture accurately.
Okay, that's a fundamental challenge.
Yeah.
So what's Alpha AI's approach? It sounds incredibly ambitious.
It is ambitious. The goal is to create a model where languages can translate directly among themselves. Without needing that pivotal dependency on a third language like English, this is huge for cultural authenticity, for genuinely accurate, nuanced communication. Think about it, meaning that isn't forced through one dominant linguistic lens.
Direct translation.
Yeah.
Wow. How would that actually change things? How do they even build that direct pathway?
The core mechanism involves developing a kind of unified alphabet that works across multiple languages. They started with 4 specific ones. This means the language strings, the meanings, are defined right inside the AI's architecture from the get-go. It bypasses the need for those intermediate translation steps or just pairing words across languages. They're essentially building the model to understand these languages intrinsically so they can talk to each other directly.
And that's called a low-resource language model. That sounds counterintuitive compared to the giant models we hear about. What does that mean?
Right. So instead of needing to scrape, petabytes of internet data, which is mostly English anyway and takes massive computing power, this model learns patterns directly from the words themselves. It uses minimal human input, mostly reinforcement learning. The aim is to build this foundational 1 million word dictionary based on these direct linguistic links. It's a much more efficient and arguably more equitable way to build it out.
A 1 million word dictionary built that way.
Sure.
That's quite the task. Where are they in the process?
Well, the foundational part, the tokenization, that's breaking language down into its smallest meaningful units, that's completely done. Overall, Josiah mentioned the project is about 30% complete on the roadmap for the newer model. So significant groundwork laid and a clear path ahead.
Beyond the tech itself, I heard there's a really deep and maybe unexpected inspiration for Alpha AI's architecture, something about ancient knowledge.
Yes, absolutely fascinating. Josiah talked about how the deep inspiration comes from studying ancient knowledge systems, specifically something called the AFA system. He described it as a system of pure computation, a predictive system. He realized this ancient knowledge offered incredible insights into the, quote, engine behind words, how meaning is actually constructed and connected at a fundamental level. So they're literally taking principles from this ancient computational wisdom and applying them to build modern AI.
Yeah.
It's about retaining and activating that knowledge today. A real fusion of ancient insight and cutting-edge tech.
That's incredible. So if Alpha AI achieves its goals, what's the potential global impact for everyday people, for the tech world?
Oh, the possibilities are huge. Imagine people being able to create content, share ideas, even generate visuals purely in their own native language without anything getting lost or distorted in translation. Picture, say, an English speaker and a Yoruba speaker having a conversation through the AI, but the AI acts as a seamless, culturally aware go-between without English dominating the exchange.
That would fundamentally change global communication, cultural exchange, everything.
Totally. And it's not just users who benefit. Think about current LLM developers. This could free them from relying on expensive, often inaccurate third-party translation APIs. Plus, because Alpha AI is planned to be open source, others could take the core model and build on it, adding their own languages, their own rules. It could foster a truly global, inclusive AI ecosystem where every language has its place.
This sounds like exactly the kind of project people would want to support or get involved in. For listeners who are inspired, how can they help?
They definitely need volunteers, especially in a couple of key areas. On the technical side, they're looking for cloud architects, specifically people with Microsoft Azure and AWS experience. Also backend engineers and full-stack developers, especially those comfortable with React on the backend. These folks are needed to build and manage the cloud infrastructure for the model.
Okay, tech skills are needed. What about language expertise?
Absolutely critical. They need native speakers to help build out that 1 million word dictionary. Specifically, they're looking for speakers of Geechee, which is an endangered Gula language from right here in South Carolina, and also West African languages like Yoruba, Igbo, and Hausa. These are mainly spoken in Nigeria, but also in places like Sierra Leone and Guinea. Volunteers would join workshops to learn the specific format needed to contribute words, ensuring everything is consistent and accurate for the model.
So if someone listening has those tech skills or speaks one of those languages, how do they raise their hand?
The first step is to go to alpha-ai.org, or the short version is f-ai.org, and fill out an interest form. After that, they encourage people to join the project's Discord community. That's where the collaboration happens. There's a selection process just to make sure they bring in committed volunteers onto the dedicated teams.
This has been a really, really insightful deep dive, exploring both sides of Josiah Misrick's work, the tangible impact of accessible cyber training uplifting communities, and then this revolutionary potential of culturally real AI bridging global language gaps. It really shows how practical skills and visionary tech can tackle fundamental needs in powerful ways.
It really does. It shows how targeted efforts, both in training and R&D, can build paths toward a future that's, more equitable and more connected for everyone.
So here's something to think about. What new frontiers, what possibilities open up when every single language can genuinely speak to AI on its own terms? And when critical tech skills become truly universal, no matter your background or where you live? Definitely something to ponder until our next deep dive.